Coming up on the Cowboys Report, as DeMarcus Lawrence and the Dallas Cowboys still have not yet reached a deal, should DeMarcus Lawrence just get his shoulder surgery now? Also, speaking of defensive linemen, David Irving, he's back talking again, and this time has some very negative and I'd say unfounded things to say about Jason Garrett. We'll break down those. And of course, let's talk contracts once again. Russell Wilson wants a big fat new deal, understandably so. What impact will a potential Wilson contract have on one for Dak Prescott? All that and more coming up on the Cowboys Report. Hello friends, welcome into the Cowboys Report presented by the MyTV Choice app. I am your host, Tom Downey. Let's dive into those Cowboys rumors and we'll get to our live mailbag and Q&A here in a little bit. First up, should DeMarcus Lawrence get his surgery now? I'm giving this one 4 stars, and I suspect that many of you are going to agree with me. Now, it's 4 stars for 2 main reasons. Number 1, I don't like the idea of using surgery as a leverage chip in contract negotiations. I don't think that's the right way to go about doing it because, yes, you can use it now, but in the long term, it's not going to pay off. And I think it makes a lot of sense for DeMarcus Lawrence in his negotiations right now to say, hey, I got my surgery done. Look, I'm ready to go. This is my olive branch to you guys, meaning the Cowboys front office, that let's get this deal done. Now, Jerry Jones has kind of, at least in the media, flipped that surgery need back on DeMarcus Lawrence when he said, hey, the longer you go without doing it, I'm of course paraphrasing here, it kind of all it does is hurt your own value, because if you're not going to be able to play in week 1 and if you wait forever, all that does is downgrade your own value. So I think for the Cowboys and DeMarcus Lawrence, at some point, I think they're going to fully figure out and realize, hey, we need each other. Like, that is the number 1 goal right now. They both need each other more than another third party can come in and help them out. And the Cowboys, we don't know the exact guaranteed money. I'm sure that is a bit of a sticking point. But the overall value isn't all that different right now. So if you can find a way to close that gap on a couple million, get a deal done. Do it before the NFL draft so that's not hanging over your head long term. So for the Cowboys and DeMarcus Lawrence, both sides have some fault here, and I think that's why so many of us are frustrated. So how frustrated are you guys right now over the Lawrence contract drama? Grade that on a scale of 1 to 10. I'm pretty frustrated. I'll give it like a 7 or an 8. I know that it's a contract negotiation. I know that's how things go. I understand that. Here's the thing. It shouldn't take this long. You should be able to get this deal done and get it going and get DeMarcus Lawrence locked up long term. I see 10s and 9s and 8s there. That's about where I'm at as well. These two sides need to get it together for the better of both Lawrence and the Cowboys long term. Let's move then. We'll stick with some defensive line talk too. If Jason Garrett is uncomfortable with some of the players, if you saw David Irving's comments, I don't know how we couldn't not bring this up. And it's fake news. I don't know for just general starters here, what David Irving has done or said or indicated in the past year plus that makes you think anything out of his mouth can be trusted. So we'll get to the exact quotes here. We do have that graphic, but I'll paraphrase here for David Irving, who on some recent interview was basically saying how he and Jason Garrett didn't get along, and Irving accuses Garrett of being uncomfortable, quote, around and with people of color, which doesn't make any sense to me. Jason Garrett has been around the NFL for decades now. He wouldn't have lasted this long if this was actually the case. Now, Irving, I think, kind of corrected himself mid-interview later on and said, he's not racist, though. Maybe just socially awkward, which I actually could kind of buy the socially awkward part, but you can't dismiss the very first part of that statement. What David Irving is doing here, something he's done consistently for the past year plus, he is finding a way to say, the reason I'm out of the NFL is not because of me. It's because my head coach didn't like me. It's because the NFL has these really tough rules about smoking marijuana, which are certainly dumb, but I just couldn't adhere to them. What David Irving continues to do, and that last quote kind of implies it, that David Irving thinks he can roll out of bed hungover and go be the best football player on the field. David Irving's really good, but that's not how it works in the NFL. Irving's desire and effort were simply never there with the Dallas Cowboys, especially in this past year when he played in 2 games and, by the way, was missing his rehab, was missing a bunch of drug tests along the way. Irving is once again trying to shift the blame away from him to somebody else. There's a great quote, by the way, from a player to Mike Fisher, who said the player said he stood up and said, "David Irving, we got your back. We believe in you." And then the player pulled David Irving aside and says, "Hey, all we need from you is, since we have your back, is to have ours as well." And the player ends it. In the end, David Irving didn't have his teammates back because Irving wasn't there for the other Cowboys players. This has nothing to do with race in reality. It has all to do with David Irving being unable to take responsibility for himself. Now, today's show is brought to you guys by the MyTV Choice app. Go download it today at mytvchoice.com. Get rid of commercials during March Madness by downloading the app. Instead of boring commercials late in games, get some awesome chat sports content sent right to your TV because the app knows when a commercial comes on. That's mytvchoice.com. Let's talk draft then here for at least a little bit. Could the Cowboys go safety at number 58 overall? I'm going to give this one 2 stars. I think it makes a lot of sense. I almost gave it 3, but you got 57 other picks before the Cowboys get on the board. Anything more than 2 feels a little bit risky. It's like 2 stars that it's a safety, 1 star it's defensive end, 1 star it's defensive tackle / receiver. That's already 5 stars, so I'm going to go with 2 here for the Cowboys as it relates to this. Now, the Cowboys do certainly need safety help, and I firmly believe there is going to be a strong prospect, if not multiple safety prospects, on the board at number 58. Now, I think defensive line overall, receiver still makes some sense there, and I'll throw out one other that I mentioned earlier this week on our NFL show, idea for the Cowboys, a possible trade up. Now, these are my top 5 needs for the Cowboys, and you can shuffle 1, 2, 3. That's kind of in its own separate tier. Then it's running back. Then it's kind of receiver, offensive line, maybe even linebacker as well in terms of long-term depth needs. Now, if you do want to go safety, here are 5 targets the Cowboys are looking at, and we know these are legitimate interest players because the Cowboys that we know of have brought in 6 different safeties for their official 30 visits. I'll have the full list for you guys later on next week. But these are 5 of the guys. We'll get to number 6 here in a little bit, hint, hint. But Jonathan Abram is one player. Will Harris, who I think is a round 3 guy, along with Willis of Michigan State. Then Taylor Rapp and Juan Thornhill. I would bet that one of those guys, at least one, is on the board at number 58, especially in terms of the Rapp, Abram, and Thornhill grouping. Now, if you don't want safety, let me know in the comment section. What position do you want the Cowboys to target in round 2? I'm open to all kinds of options. I think receiver's fine. Maybe tight end, although I wouldn't love tight end in round 2. It's a cursed position for the Cowboys in the draft. They just never do well with it. And then defensive line also makes some sense for me as well. Now, we mentioned 5 of the Cowboys safety pre-draft visits. Here's your 6th. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, the Florida Gators safety / almost nickelback. I'm only going to give it the 1 star, though. I know the Cowboys have interest. That's very clear. The problem is, even though Todd McShay mocked Gardner-Johnson to the Cowboys in round 2, I have a very tough time seeing him actually lasting all the way to pick 58. Heck, I don't think Gardner-Johnson's going to last to pick 28 in the NFL draft. Now, if he does, if he slides, all of a sudden you're in pick 38, you're in the low 40s, I think he could be a trade-up candidate. I think he'd be a really good fit in the Cowboys secondary alongside Xavier Woods, can play some nickel corner if the Cowboys need him to do that. So I love the idea of Gardner-Johnson on the Cowboys to play more of a varied, strong safety role where he's not just a box guy, but he can play in the box with so much better tackling this year, can even cover tight ends, which I would like to find in this year's class among strong safety. I would like to find a tight end stopper. But despite the fact that I like that idea, I have a tough time thinking that you're going to find a way to get Gardner-Johnson at 58. That would be one of the biggest surprises to me, beyond like the outlandish stuff of like Ed Oliver falling, for example. I have a tough time seeing Gardner-Johnson making it quite that far in the actual NFL draft. But if he's there, he's a fantastic selection. Today's show is brought to you guys by BetDSI. Head over to chatsports.com/bet and use that promo code Cowboys120 for a 120% deposit bonus. You put down $50, they're going to give you $60 for free. They're going to have all kinds of NFL draft prop bets. Double hints here. A, sign up and deposit, and then follow me on Twitter at WhatGoingDowney. I'll tweet out the goods there for the prop bets. You'll make some money just like you did if you followed me on Twitter during the NFL Combine. make some money there on BetDSI, chatsports.com/bet. Let's move then to some quarterback contract talk. Will Russell Wilson's deal impact the one for Dak Prescott? I'm going to give this one 3 stars. I think it makes some sense, but maybe not along the lines as extreme as some have suggested. But Russell Wilson, understandably so, wants a big fat new contract, and he wants it by April 15th. If and when Wilson gets that deal from Seattle, assuming he's not traded potentially, I think that it's going to be the highest paid player in the NFL. That's how contracts tend to work out. Now, I do not think Dak Prescott should get that amount of money, but there's 2 things here. Number 1, the bar is simply raised. All of a sudden, the Matt Ryan deal, well, maybe Dak Prescott actually can get that type of money from the Dallas Cowboys. The bar goes up, everybody gets dragged up along with it. And if you are Dak Prescott's agent, you better believe you're starting your contract negotiations. You're going to come down, of course, at what Russell Wilson got. Now, we've gone over my projections for Dak Prescott before. 5 years, $147.5 million. And the nice thing is, with the way the deal works out, if you do it this year, the contract changes. Because you still have the 4th year of Prescott's rookie contract, it becomes a much more palatable 6 years under $150 million. But when Dak Prescott and his high-powered agents sit down at the negotiation table, they're going to say, look what Russell Wilson got. And oh, by the way, look what my client's done over the past 3 years. And did we mention your quarterback just beat that quarterback in the playoffs, no less? Now, I think we can all agree that Russell Wilson is better than Dak Prescott. But the numbers actually aren't that different. Dak has fewer touchdowns and less yards, but fewer interceptions, and he's more accurate on a completion percentage basis. Now, from a rushing perspective, take special note of the touchdowns. A lot more. It's only a 9 total touchdown difference over the past few years. Now, I'm not saying that Dak is better than Russell Wilson. He's not, although he does fumble less than Russell Wilson does. But I'm saying that when the agents get together with the front office, that is going to be a talking point. So what should the Cowboys do with Dak Prescott? Type P for pay him now or type W for wait? I think you pay him now. If you believe in Dak Prescott, nothing is going to change over the next calendar year that's going to suddenly make you believe in him more. So it makes a lot more financial sense to pay him now. And if you don't believe in Dak Prescott, well, then you want to wait, and I understand that, but just make sure you're aware, the longer you wait, the more money Dak Prescott is going to get from the Cowboys once he hits that open market, so to speak. We will get to our live Q&A here, folks, in just a little bit, so use hashtag Cowboys in the comments section if you want your questions or just outright comments featured on the show. Again, use that hashtag Cowboys down there on Facebook and on YouTube. But one last rumor, you guys probably didn't like the Dak Prescott one. Maybe you'll like the Brett Maher one instead. Is he on the roster bubble? I'm giving this one 3 stars. Not necessarily for right the second he's about to get cut, but I think once we get through the draft and most importantly, the undrafted free agent process, that Brett Maher will be competing for his job. He was up and down this year. I think that's a fair way to sum up the season. The highs were really good. Game-winning kicks. The bads were, why'd you miss the one you should make 99 times out of 100 there, Brett? But for Maher, there's very little reason to not bring in competition. Why wouldn't you do that if you're the Dallas Cowboys? Bring him in, and be it an undrafted free agent, maybe even a 7th round pick, because that's just a super priority undrafted free agent. But for the Cowboys, why wouldn't you want to compete, have someone to compete with Maher? That's what you did with Dan Bailey in reality. And for the Cowboys, Maher is going to turn 30 this year, which I know is weird because we think of him as like a first-year player, but he's already about to turn 30 in November. So if someone like a Matt Gay, a Cole Tracy in particular, those 2 guys are, I think, the top kickers this year, but they're kickers, so, do whatever you guys want to do, I guess, in the end there. Bring them in. Let them compete with Brett Maher. Now, should the Cowboys draft a kicker this year? Give me a 1 for yes, a 0 for no. If you do it before round 7, I don't know what you're doing with as a franchise. Never spend anything before a round 7 pick on a kicker. Once you get to round 7, there's no such thing as a bad round 7 pick because the vast majority of those guys don't make any type of impact. That's the reality of the NFL. Now, I'd say wait till undrafted free agency and just sign someone like you did with Dan Bailey, but I don't think you have to go out and draft someone necessarily, so I'm actually typing in 0 for now. Hey Cowboys fans, thanks for watching the Cowboys Report. If you haven't already, click right here to subscribe to our channel for all the best Cowboys coverage on the internet. That's news, rumors, highlights, mailbags, film studies, and a whole lot more. And I'm making your lives a little bit easier as well with the next Cowboys Report video right here.